Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Perpetual Chess. I wanted to give thanks, as always, to our sponsors, Chessable.com. We will be discussing one of the Chessable authors. Garry Kasparov is finally out with his first Chessable course, Great Predecessors Volume 4. It's about Bobby Fischer. We'll probably be discussing Bobby Fischer, too. So be sure to check that out. Super exciting. 12 hours of video recording of Kasparov just, going through Fischer's games. That's pretty cool. And, of course, you can get it in text and playthrough format as well. As for our guest this week, it's someone I'm a longtime fan of. He is a award-winning chess journalist, the director of news and events for chess.com. He's interviewed grandmasters like Magnus Carlsen, Garry Kasparov at Bobby Fischer's graves. This is going to sound a little weird, but I'm a particular fan of his obituaries. He covers all kinds of chess news for chess.com. But whenever we lose one of the great figures in the chess world, I always really appreciate the in-depth features that he does and the reflections he gets from the colleagues of whoever it is that we lost. So longtime fan of his writing, and now he is out with a great new book called The Chess Revolution. And this is basically a modern history of chess. It touches on the entire history going back to its beginnings, its pop culture representations, AI and chess engines, and how that impact the future of chess. My favorite part of the book is the second half. The first half is more about the broader history, the deeper history of chess, but the second half is really the modern history, the rise of his company, chess.com, the rise of engines, the rise of Magnus, so on and so forth. And obviously, I'm pretty well steeped in the chess culture, but I learned a lot from this book and really enjoyed it. And for those of you newer to the chess world, it's a great sort of 30,000-foot view of everything you need to know. It's not chess diagram based. It's something you can read in bed, and I'm excited to dig into it and to welcome to the program, Peter Dochers. Welcome, Peter.
Thanks, Ben. Really great to be here. Thank you and also for the nice introduction.
Oh, sure. How did I do with the Dutchification, or rather proper pronunciation of your last name?
Pretty good. Yeah. No, usually in English, of course, people say Doggers, but with the Dutch G, it becomes Doggers, and both are fine, to be honest.
Okay, excellent. And we've got a lot to discuss. So we're recording this on October 18th. It will likely be out on October 29th, which is the day of the release of Peter's book here in the United States. But as we record this, there's just crazy chess news left and right. So I just wanted to quickly acknowledge a few things. I'm sorry I'm not able to do breaking coverage of any of these stories, and who knows what will have happened in the 10 days between when this is recorded and when it comes out. I've got some family stuff going on that limits the amount of time I'm at my computer, you could say. But let's just acknowledge, first of all, there's this Kirill Shevchenko story that I'll be discussing with Peter. It actually ties in nicely with his book. You've got Kramnik making unfounded allegations against Daniel Rensch, supposedly cheating online. I mean, that's not that new, although it seems they're talking about a match. Who knows if anything will happen. And then as we record this, yesterday the news broke that unfortunately young Grandmaster Christopher Yu, I think we don't even have to say allegedly because it's on video, physically assaulted a videographer at the St. Louis Chess Club. It's really a sad story. We don't know all the details by any means, but just wanted to mention that it occurred. And I'm sure in due time I'll be discussing it or discussing all of the news from the chess world as we do. Did want to highlight human achievement as well. Carissa Yip, shout out to Carissa, is doing off to an amazing start in the U.S. Women's Championship, 6 out of 6. Of course, Fischer's got the unbeatable record of going undefeated without even a draw in the U.S. Championship, and Rex Sinkfeld has a special prize if anyone manages to go undefeated. So she's halfway there. You guys will know if she got it by the time you hear this. But in any event, just wanted to acknowledge those stories before we dig in with Peter. And Peter, as I said, I'd like to start from the Kirill Shevchenko story, because you write extensively about the Hans Niemann story, about cheating more generally. And you even wrote in the book that you worry that chess, OTB cheating in particular, might be underemphasized or not worried about enough. So I guess this is a leading question, but did this Shevchenko story surprise you?
Oh, yeah, it did. But to be honest, also partly because of the profile of the player. I mean, he's a young talented player coming from Ukraine, now living in Romania, and I don't know. Somehow, yeah, I don't know if cheating fits with any type of chess player, but it really doesn't seem to really fit with this player, because he's, yeah. I guess it doesn't say much, but he's already very strong himself. He has won tournaments, and you would sort of guess like, well, he certainly doesn't need it, right? But at the same time, just about anyone is probably a little bit sensitive and prone to maybe do something a bit silly in his life or in her life at some point. We've all done things we regret. So yeah, maybe he did do something. But I must say, I'm a bit well. Maybe by the time this gets posted, there are more details coming out. But I'm a bit reluctant to sort of already include it into a cheating story, in the sense that we just have to be careful, and we need to have like clear proof. I still believe in that. And right now, like a few days after the news broke, which by the way has now also been covered by New York Times, there's still a lot of questions, maybe more questions that were raised than were answered. As I understand, it was about a locked phone, so I don't even know if the organizers managed to open up the phone and for example see if there was a chess engine running or even a chess program active on the phone. We don't even know that, I think. The evidence that the phone was his was based on handwriting, which I guess could work, but yeah, I don't know, in the court of law if it would be seen as very strong evidence of phone possession. So, but yeah, the arbiter did say that he has enough to believe that that it should be a case for the ethics commission. By the way, what I also found a bit strange is that, well, in general at chess tournaments, sometimes it's not very clear where the restroom area is, and whether the restroom area is actually part of the official playing hall area where you can move around as a player, or whether it's actually outside the official area where you're not supposed to walk around. There's always many cases a bit of a gray zone in this case, but apparently at the Spanish team championship, the restrooms were outside the official area. But at the same time, there's like a few dozen, I don't know how many players played, maybe several dozen players were playing. And as I was reading the article, every single one of them had constantly had to ask the arbiter for permission to go to the restroom. Really? That is a very strange part of the story that I don't get. And then the note itself, written by Kirill apparently, or supposedly written by Kirill, about leaving the phone alone because he needed it later on at night. I think, what by the way was pretty good Spanish. So did he ask someone to write that in Spanish? I don't know. There's so many strange things about this case that in general we have to be just careful treating it and discussing it.
Yeah, it's a very good point. And just to give a few more sort of big picture points about what the story is, I probably should have highlighted that a little bit more. But as Peter alluded to, there was a phone found that there players who played Kirill complained about him being away from the board a lot. Paco Vallejo, who's been on the podcast, lost to him in round 2, and Basim Amin also lost to him. And both players were suspicious of the amount of time he was spending away from the board. This is circumstantial, but there were reports that he was waiting to use a particular stall in the bathroom. And as Peter said, in that stall, there was a phone with a note attached to it. The note saying, please leave this phone overnight. Please don't remove this phone. Hold on, I actually have it here. Colin McGordy did a nice write-up, informative write-up on chess.com. The note said, don't touch. This telephone has been left so the owner can answer it at night. So
yeah, it's very odd, isn't it?
Yeah, it really is. So it doesn't look good, but it's a very important point that we don't know for sure. And I, of course, interviewed Kirill as well. He seemed like a nice young man. I certainly wouldn't have suspected him based on our limited interactions. Also, of course, as a Ukrainian refugee, he's been through a lot over the past couple years, as any Ukrainian has, worth mentioning as well. But that's all we know, but just wanted to acknowledge it. Because
and the latest, by the way, is that this earlier today, FIDE came with a statement that the Ethics and Disciplinary Committee chairman basically agreed that there is enough for investigating, enough for a case. And the suggestion from that message, I believe, is that because this already has been accepted as a case, Shevchenko is probably not going to play any FIDE-rated tournaments anytime soon, pending the investigation.
Okay. And then he actually won title Tuesday, a few days before that. Now, I'm guessing you can't say, to the extent that there was any internal discussions and that you're aware of them, you probably can't even say anything beyond that.
I'm not involved in any of that, actually, to be honest. I've never been in specific Slack channels where individual cases are being discussed, so I really cannot say anything about that.
Okay. So yeah, we'll leave it there on the Kirill story. Obviously, by the time you hear this, more information may or may not have come to light. But certainly, cheating is one of the big themes of your book, unfortunately. So I guess even though, as you said, the individual circumstances surprised you, do you think there's a solution for OTB cheating in particular?
I think, like with online chess, there will never be a way of avoiding cases 100%. But when I mentioned in the book that I suspect that there's more happening than we know of, it's more based on personal experiences, because I have played tournaments, open tournaments in a lot of different places, and usually they are a bit smaller. Even a week ago, I was visiting some friends. They played the Amateur Open in Mallorca, islands of Spain, and those like tournaments with like up to 100 participants, just one arbiter who's also doing the DGT boards at the same time. It's all very low key, low profile, and in a tournament like that, there's simply no budget, for example, for a scanner, for random checks, or even more serious measures. And so it is fairly easy, I believe, to actually bring a phone to a bathroom, and no one will ever catch you. I mean, especially if you wear a jacket, you can just put it in your inside pocket. You can just put it. You could keep it closed, shut off. I mean, and then phones boot up pretty quickly these days. And I'm sure the fact that it's that easy at so many tournaments is sort of automatically suggesting that there has to be a lot of cases where nobody ever hears about it. So what I'm suggesting in the book also is, I believe that it is a little bit the task, the job of FIDE also to help those smaller opens to do a better job, because you cannot expect them to know about everything, to know how to do it, to actually be able to invest in it properly. Because you do have to invest, I would say, a few $1,000s at least to have some proper measures. So I don't know. Maybe there should be some special funds being created for this, and divided on player ratio towards the open tournaments, because it's part of. There's a lot of rules organizers have to follow to be able to have their tournament FIDE rated. And I think, a decent anti-cheating measure should be part of that.
Yeah, it's tough because we've discussed on this podcast before. Obviously, it's not big business to run chess tournaments, particularly in Europe. In the United States, of course, they have more of a for-profit model, which has its own benefits and certainly drawbacks as well. But it's hard as it is to rent a facility to put on a chess tournament. To have the security measures on top of that is certainly a challenge. I always think of Grandmaster Alex Fishbein when I was doing a bunch of interviews around the Niemann story, pointing out that ultimately chess there always has been an element of it being an honor system. And it's kind of hard to remove that. It's kind of hard to envision a world. First of all, do we want to live in a world where you're, strip searched on your way into a tournament? And second of all, how feasible is it? But you tell some fun stories.
What I do in Wijk among the amateurs, because Wijk obviously also has hundreds of amateurs playing. And there they do the famous random checks. They basically say, okay, we're going to do 3 or 4 players every round. And it's quite a nuisance because it's during the game.
Yeah.
But it's only a nuisance for a handful of players. And if you're lucky, it will not happen anymore to you for the rest of the tournament. So I think that is a nice, like a compromise solution, actually.
Yeah, I agree. And at least it shows some diligence, it shows some awareness. So at least plants the seed that people can be caught, even if you can't police every single potential action, and you still have to worry about phones hidden in stalls and signaling and, so many other things. But on the topic of cheating, you tell some fun stories, including the famous Turk fake chess player. This story has got a lot of lore associated in with the chess world. I know that our mutual friend Jen Shahadi has written about it, for example. But could you tell this story for those less familiar?
Well, I should tell the short version. Of course, it is pretty famous, and I'm putting it in the chapter about cheating, which is like the 3rd chapter of the influence of computers on chess. But I've noticed that others have mentioned the story actually when they start talking about the earliest examples of chess and AI joining forces, because of course it is about the idea that an automatic machine, or what they used to call it in those days, the late 18th century, automatons, being able to actually play a game of chess. And it was a time when it was a big rage among higher society to have things like that, things automatically working. Like so engineers would like build a bird from metal, for example, and the bird would be able to move around and even lay an egg. And the courts, the high society, loved those kind of things. And there were perpetual clocks, all kinds of things were the rage in those days. And at some point, a high commissioner at the court in Vienna said, to the Empress Teresa, I can make you something that is much more exciting than what we have right now. And so he did. And a couple of months later, he came with this big desk. Basically, it's a big. How would you describe it? It's a big table, but also more wood below it. Big chest maybe type of thing. And on top there would be a chess set, and very importantly, there will be a figure, like a puppet dressed like a Oriental figure, and in those days that would automatically be seen as someone from Turkey, or the Ottoman Empire. So they would call it the Turk, the doll, and it would start moving around when the game was being played. So human beings were invited to play against this doll. Meanwhile, they would open doors, and you would see all kinds of little metals, technology, like clockwork stuff moving around, rattling around, and suggesting that it's actually doing something inside, right? And then it started. It beat just about everyone, and famously, even Napoleon himself played a game against the Turk. The thing got a new owner later on. It toured through the whole world, Europe, but also later it was shipped to the United States, where it toured. I think it was in New York and Boston, but also London and Paris. So that it had a bit of a second career, and for like 30, 40 years, it was a thing, and people were really wondering. And even Edgar Allan Poe wrote an essay about it, suggesting how it was possible that this, because everyone was wondering how is it possible, and only somewhere in the mid 19th century it was revealed that there was actually someone inside the thing. Of course, pretty strong chess player. Actually, multiple chess players over time have been inside, and they were playing for the doll, for the puppet. So an amazing story, and an early example of trickery, of a form of cheating someone over chess, right? So I decided it should be in the cheating chapter. Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, I mean, it's just a classic story, and as Jen
Yeah.
highlighted in her book, like the sort of beauty of the story is the inversion of what we worry about now.
Yeah.
Whereas
Exactly.
it used to be that in order for a machine to beat you, there had to be a human behind it, and now whenever a human beats you, you worry
Yeah.
that there's a machine behind it. And
Although,
again,
what I could say about that, of course, is that um, it was still the same in '97 because in the famous Kasparov-Deep Blue
yeah, that's
match,
where I was going to go. Go ahead.
Gary was also suggesting human interference. So
Yeah.
that was closer to the Mechanical Turk than to what we have now.
Yeah. Another famous story that you unearthed some new info about, or
Yeah.
at least that I was unaware of. And you, of course, tell that story well in the book, but you actually highlight another moment as what you refer to as sort of the crossing the Rubicon moment in terms of, you know, computers are better than humans and we're not going back. You highlight this computer Hydra just
Mhm.
crushing legendary Grandmaster Mickey Adams in a match. What is it about that match that stood out to you as you looked back at the history of AI in chess?
Well, it was also a combination of how Kasparov Deep Blue developed because yeah, as we now know and Gary also admitted, um, it was mostly the psychological problems that he had that he lost, and of course that very silly sixth game where he allowed a knight sacrifice in the Caro-Kann. But he wasn't the weaker player at that back then, and in fact, I think if he would have played at his very best, I think he would still have beaten Deep Blue. To be honest, maybe with 3.5, 2.5 as well, the small numbers, but still. So that is one thing that we were not really there yet, I believe. At the same time, we have to admit that in the years after, until early 2000s, the chess matches were played on worse hardware. So if we were talking about matches against Fritz or things like that, they were not using the power that IBM had with the machine Deep Blue. Oh, by the way, before we move on to that's Adam's Hydra, I should mention that. And we are about to publish a big article on it on chess.com, including a big review of mine. There is this new television series called Rematch. It is a dramatized version of Kasparov Deep Blue, and it's
Oh, wow.
really good, actually. I would say that after the Queen's Gambit, this is one of the best series on chess I've seen. I mean, Queen's Gambit is just on a very high level, of course, but this is very good as well. I can really recommend it. It is currently available on Arte France, and but not available in many countries. It's probably not directly viewable unless you use a VPN. But it should be also on HBO and Disney Plus.
Oh, great.
So it's called Rematch, and I can recommend everyone watching it. And in fact, by the time this is out, I should also have interviewed Gary about it. Next Monday, we're planning to do an interview with Gary about how he looks at that series. So that's also going to be exciting.
Excellent.
But yeah, there were some matches where I believe both Gary and Vladimir Kramnik were actually tying with versions of Fritz. Kramnik had a 3-3, the one where he blundered the mate in one, for example. And then suddenly there was this bigger machine because Hydra was actually running on more powerful hardware than in the years before. I don't know if it was comparable with Deep Blue, but it was very strong. It was backed by Abu Dhabi investors, I believe, and one draw. I mean, you have 6 games, and one of the world's best grandmasters loses 5 and barely scrapes a single draw there. I mean, that was just the first sort of wipeout that we saw, and there was no denying anymore. Basically, so it was a combination of Gary clearly not being that much inferior yet, and then like what was it, 7 years later, Mickey Adams. I mean, he's not at the level of Kasparov, but it was close, of course, in human terms. Just having hardly any chance of playing this machine, that was for me a much more clear example of we've lost the battle, we've lost the fight.
Yeah. And now, of course, it's a total blowout with, everyone's phones being stronger than
Right.
Magnus. And we actually, Peter, have a question from a Patreon supporter of the pod who is actually featured in your book, Brian Karen.
Nice.
Who, of course, was involved in ICC in early days. And one of the many fun topics you cover is sort of the early days of internet chess. Took me back as a fellow 40-something that was playing chess in those days, the dot matrix pictures of the chessboard and so on and so forth.
Yeah.
But anyway, here's Brian's question. He says, chess has undergone remarkable transformations over the centuries, evolving into the AI-driven, internet-based game we see today. Kudos on tackling such a fascinating topic in your book. With rapid advancements in virtual technology, neural links, and AI, where do you see chess heading in the next 10 years? How do you think these technologies will further impact the way the game is played and experienced?
Oh, yeah, that's a very big question, and it's hard to predict. But I would say we will see fairly gradual changes. As I'm also noticing with for example, with these large learning models, which were like the big rage when I started writing the book. I mean, everyone was talking about ChatGPT, and of course, by now everyone is using them. But to be honest, I have not seen major improvements over the last 2 years, even though they were announced and predicted. It turns out to be hard to actually get them to really reason like a human being. There's still algorithms that are guessing the next best words in the sentence, I believe. And I think that is a bit similar is going to be with the chess engines. I'm sure they're going to be improving further, but I don't think there will be a big blow like we saw with AlphaZero coming anytime soon. Unless there's going to be a very different type of technology that, for example, something with quantum computers. It's the same answer I give when people ask me when do you think chess will be solved? I mean, and is it possible that it will be solved? I mean, at the moment, it's basically not possible to create a 32-piece database, because I believe the amount of hardware you need to store those data, it's a giant database, right? I think it's like hard drives that cover the surface of the Earth a few times, basically. So it's simply physically not possible. So we need very different technology to ever solve the game of chess, and I think that's the same thing for having new major breakthroughs in chess engines. But at the same time, I'm not a big expert there, so you never know for sure. What we are seeing is probably going to continue a bit more, which is that we're gonna focus probably more on speed chess. We're gonna have a lot of rapid and blitz events. I mean, it's also what Magnus is proposing to. He's stepping away from classical chess more and more, right? But at the same time, I do hope that we will have a place. We will keep a place for classical chess, if only because we have such an amazing tradition. I mean, organizing a world championship since 1886. It's the sort of the backbone of chess history in the 20th and 21st centuries. And now with Ding Liren Gukesh coming, I mean, this is just a continuation of an amazing tradition that we have, and we should really keep it. So all the new and faster events, I hope they can be additional to the classical events, and I hope we're not going to lose. I hope Wijk aan Zee will remain the same. I think it's a brilliant format every year. Norway chess is great to have. I think London chess will have a new edition again this year as well in the Arsenal Stadium. It's going to be amazing. So let's hope the ones we like and the ones we have are going to stay. And at the same time, we can have a lot of new and faster events happening as well.
Yeah, I tend to agree. I think a 10-year time frame, I'm not too worried as someone who does enjoy classical chess. If you expand the horizon beyond that, I might start to worry a bit more. Danny Rensch, your boss, of course, recently did an interesting interview with Levitov on Levitov's YouTube channel, where he talked about chess.com's particular directions, and worth checking out for sure. And I mean, it just seems like in the near term, there's going to be more experimentation. And, as you mentioned, faster time controls, but also Fischer Random, Chess 960, Freestyle, whatever.
Yeah. There's going to be 3 tournaments next year. This is Weissenhaus event, and then South Africa and United States.
Yeah.
Hopefully they're going to happen, and it's a great new tour. Well, we just had the Global Chess League, of course. Very different take on organizing an event. I mean, the chess was the same, but the way the point system and the team distribution. I mean, everything is always people always have to get used to all those new ideas, and I guess some of them we may regret that they did it that way. For example, the no increment time control and all the debates and the craziness that happened there. I mean, but okay, it only suggests that people are trying something new, and then they can move slowly towards the perfect format, hopefully in the next year or the year after, and maybe in the end we will find something that people will want to watch on TV. That is still something we should try, and people are trying. So I think that's great.
Yeah, for sure. Also wanted to mention it's recently been announced Magnus is going to play Fabiano in freestyle chess in Singapore, preceding the World Championship. And I mean, for better or for worse, probably what ends up dominating is going to be market driven. So if you're not interested in something and you don't watch it, you're casting your vote, your tiny little vote for that thing occurring less. And personally, I'm still warming up to freestyle chess. It's not my favorite format. I prefer I'd rather watch classical or faster chess, but I certainly understand that it's overwhelming the amount of theory that these top players need to learn. I mean, it's overwhelming for me when I think about going to a tournament. So I can only imagine at the professional level what they have to deal with. All right, let's get one more of my favorite stories from this book. I mean, not that we're wrapping up, but before we move on to another topic, so you in your telling of the history of internet chess, you highlight this moment. Of course, Hikaru becomes this dominant force on early chessclub.com. Smallville was eventually his account name, and then Magnus is starting to play online. And you highlight this moment that you believe to be the first match between Magnus and Hikaru, and you say that you think that was 2004. Is that right?
Yeah, I actually checked this with Tarjei Svensson, who was already an admin at ICC back in the day. Of course, later on he became even more famous for doing Magnus' social media for a few years. He was suddenly this amazing Norwegian journalist covering everything about Magnus for many years, and now he's actually one of our main writers on chess.com. So it's also great to have him with us. But he helped me because he has a long history on ICC. And we were basically looking for early games on their accounts, and this was the first we could find the mutual games between one of the Magnus accounts and Hikaru's account. And it was, now that I'm thinking, it was 6 years. I'm not mentioning this story in my book actually because I had to cut a few things, but it was 6 years before they also played this famous over the board secret match in Moscow, where I was actually one of the few people attending that. But in 2004, Magnus won this match with a fairly big margin, I think. So that showed his immense talent because he was, I think, 13. It was the same year he was going to play against Kasparov for the first time in Reykjavik. So he must have been 13, and Hikaru was a couple of years older. And I mean, I was mentioning it because, of course, now it is sort of, we describe it as the ultimate rivalry online. It's like the Ronaldo versus Messi kind of story for chess, Hikaru and Magnus. And it's always nice to know, when did it start and how did it start?
Yeah, classic stuff. And what are your memories of so for listeners less familiar, in 2010, I think there's like video little stories about this, but basically
Macaulay Peterson, a good friend of mine who used to work also for ICC and later also for ChessBase and Chess24. He was the one actually doing some filming. So there's some video material, and I think he still plans to make something like a mini video out of it.
Great.
When he has the time. It's going to be a historical little document. Yeah, it was. I think it was right after the World Blitz in Moscow, and it was sort of a spontaneous thing that was being organized, and we ended up in I think Henrik's hotel room, Magnus's father, and I was there too. And the last person who was there was Dirk-Jan ten Geuzenam of New in Chess magazine. So that
Of
was the little
course.
group.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Fitting.
And it was fascinating to see. Of course, they were both very young. If I look back at it, and I have not been there throughout the match because they played a lot of games. I think up to 40 games or something like that. And I think initially they wanted to play 100, but then they realized that would be really crazy. They would be finishing 7 a.m. So that didn't happen. But I think up to 40 they played, and it was lovely. It was just the speed at which they play, and of course they really wanted to win this one. You got a bit of the feeling that it meant more to them than the actual World Blitz title.
Right. God, and they were so young, right? I mean,
yes.
Yeah. What a story. Yeah, and there's so
I
many
think
more.
Macaulay has a little piece on it on what's it called? USCF Online, the website of the
okay.
Chess. Yeah.
Okay, so yeah, I'll try to track that down and link to it. And shout out to Macaulay, one of the OG chess reporters as well. Well, again, there's so many topics. We can't hit them all. I'll just briefly mention you in your history of chess.com. You also sort of interweave the history of LiChess and Thibaut's, Thibaut Duplessis, LiChess founders, history with chess.com.
Yeah.
Definitely some details that I didn't know about.
Although, to be honest, I have to say here that it was quite unfortunate that I in the end failed to actually speak to the LiChess people. I reached out to Thibaut very early in the process, and also later on to Theo Waits and some other people. And I don't know what happened. I was several times requesting for some comments, and of course, if only because I was trying to corroborate what I had written already based on stories from Danny and Eric. But yeah, unfortunately, in the end, they never really got back to me on my questions. So I do hope that it's accurate. I think it's accurate, but it's mostly based on the stories from Eric Alabest, Daniel Rensch, Jay Severson, who are all involved in that period. And we're talking about a period when Jay and Eric, the founders of chess.com, for a couple of years, they tried to build a new website on exercise.com, basically creating a big site about health and fitness and building it in a new technology programming language. And on that website for exercise.com, Thibaut actually went to California and worked with them for a while.
Yeah, it's some fascinating details there. Yeah, and like you say, hopefully that they are all right. It's unfortunate you couldn't corroborate that. But as you mentioned in the book, Jay Severson, is it Severson or Sevenson? Sorry, I'm familiar with his lore, with Jay's lore.
Yeah, I usually pronounce Severson, I believe.
Severson, okay, sorry. Jay Severson mentions that they're not on speaking terms with Thibaut, unfortunately. So, and I guess
it's just different philosophies, I guess, on bringing the game. Although there's also a lot of similarities. I mean, in the end, I think both sides and both people behind the sides, all the people have the same thing in common, which is that basically. Everyone should be able to play chess, and the game can be grown more, and more people can get interested in the game. So yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I'm a fan of both sites, and I think many chess fans feel that way, even if they have a personal favorite. All right, another big picture topic I want to at least touch on. Again, we can only scratch the surface of this 400+ page book, but you write about the GOATs, the greatest of all time. Of course, most chess players have coalesced around Magnus, Kasparov, and Fischer as the three that belong at the sort of final table, as it were. But I recently interviewed Charles Hertan, who's out with a great new biography from New in Chess, The Real Paul Morphy, and the aforementioned Brian Karen, among others. Had asked why Morphy is not in those conversations. So I'm putting you on the spot here, Peter. Did you consider Morphy for that section or not really?
Not really. For basically for the general feeling I have that he would still not be on the level of the other three that I am talking about. But I have to admit that where I'm mentioning at the end, I'm sort of concluding that that it's actually at the moment we should probably still give Kasparov the title of GOAT, and if only because Magnus is still doing that. With Magnus, of course, having the chance to go over it if he continues and has more successes. And then I'm sort of saying, without giving too much away, but of course that the Fischer story might still be more unique than the other two in the sense that he was more ahead of his peers, more ahead of his time than his peers were in 71 and 72. And exactly that, of course, is also an aspect for Paul Morphy, who was just ahead of everyone else. So Brian has a point there that in that category, I could definitely have included Morphy as if you talk about the chess players who are more ahead of their time than others, he's in the top three as well. I think, yeah.
Yeah, that's the main argument for Morphy. And when I interviewed Charles, we talked about why it is, and I do think part of it is that his peers just weren't as good, as I mentioned to Charles, but also I think part of it is also it was so long ago that no one lived through it. Whereas obviously Fischer, it's starting to be in the rearview mirror, but I mean, I interview people every 2 months who play chess because of Fischer, because of the Fischer boom. So it still casts a long shadow, and obviously Magnus and Kasparov even more so, with their dominance being more recent. I love the quote, speaking of Fischer, about his dominance being as if like something like an Eskimo in Alaska cleared off the snow and took up tennis and became the best tennis player in the world.
Yeah. That was from his sister, I believe. I think his sister wrote that.
Amazing quote.
I hadn't seen it that often elsewhere, so I decided to use it as well. But by the way, I think Morphy might also simply be in the top three of most talented players ever, because I mean, how on earth? Even more than Fischer, you get the feeling that he sort of learned it all by himself. Because Fischer at least got to play tournaments in Europe to get stronger, right? So you get the feeling also that Morphy could have been even better because if only he had stronger competitors at his time, because. That I think it's very obvious. Fischer also partly became very strong because he could compete against all the Soviet players in tournaments and candidates matches and stuff. Garry got much stronger for playing that famous first 48 game match against Karpov in 1984. And Magnus, I mean, he had to beat everyone before him. He had to beat Kramnik, Topalov, and Vichy, obviously, which tremendously helped him. So if only there was more than just Adolf Andersson, but a few more really strong players back then maybe Morphy would have a bigger challenge, and maybe in the end he would have been an even stronger player. Yeah. Also, by the way, if he could have played longer, because in the end he only played a couple of years, right?
Yeah. Similar to Fischer in that regard. Fischer played longer. And that was what Charles Hertan concluded too. He wasn't going to die on the ledge that he's the best player of all time. Actually, in Charles's opinion, it's Magnus. I'm with you. I'm on Team Kasparov still. But he did say that Morphy, he believes, is the most talented of all time. But let's go a little more big picture into the writing of the book. While we have you here, Peter, as a fellow writer, I'm interested in that. And also, I mean, just as someone who knows so much about chess, yet was tasked with writing so much about chess, I'm curious, like for you, what was the most challenging part to research? Like, for example, in your chapter about pop culture and chess, I was amazed at like how many references to chess you found. Of course, they're out there, but to catalog them is a daunting task. Yeah. Like, was that something that was more from the top of your head, or was a lot of research involved?
It was a bit of a combination. I must say that, by the way, the biggest challenge for me in general was that I had to really sort of change my lifestyle a bit compared to writing online, because of course, I have been writing online for more than 15 years, and on my own website, Chess Vibes, and since 2013 for chess.com. And on many days, there would be simply a big news story. And for many years, I was always the main person to cover it. Now we have like 5 or 6 very good writers at chess.com, and we can sort of divide the labor more, which works better also in different time zones. But I think for at least 10 years, I would be the main guy doing this either on my own website or on chess.com. And that brought a sort of rhythm in my day, where you wake up and you have your breakfast and you actually create the biggest story of chess from that day, whether it was like round 6 from Wijk aan Zee or it was a cheating scandal or it was an obituary. I would do that the main story, and then there would be small other things to do in the rest of the day. But it was basically what brought structure in my life. And with the book, it's sort of the opposite kind of work, because you don't have to necessarily do everything every single day, and there is you don't have that clear deadline of a daily deadline. And there's actually you have only a single deadline, which is not even super clear, because the publishers are at the start. They're not always they're not even sure when they want to put the deadline. They give you a sort of a ballpark. What is the figure?
Yeah, ballpark.
Ballpark. Yeah. So suddenly you have to be structured yourself. You have to get up and you have to go to the library, for example. That helps a lot, by the way. We have this amazing a library in The Hague here in Holland, and it's one of the biggest collections of chess books in the world, actually. I think it's the biggest in Europe, combined with draughts or checkers, it is like 30,000 books. But I think the large majority is chess, to be honest. And it's basically every single book you've ever heard of, it will be there and more. So that helps a lot in research. I went there, I think, like 5 or 6 times.
How far is that from where you are in Amsterdam?
Oh, that is I would say it's like an hour, slightly under an hour by car, but I use public transport, and then it's like 1.5 hours to get there.
Oh, not bad. Yeah,
it's okay.
That's amazing. That's a good break.
It's a very small country.
Yeah,
and especially since most of the country actually uses only the western part of Holland. It's even smaller. Yeah. We're talking about the first part of the book because it's 3 parts. It's chess and culture, basically. Part 1, part 2 is chess and computers, and part 3 is chess and internet. And the first part about culture is. I have a few early chapters about the history of the game, and I'm showing how enormously embedded chess is in Western culture, in literature and cinema and science and so many things, and arts. And I'm trying to sort of show it by giving a lot of examples, but also try to explain why this is the case, and why also more than with other games, for example. And if we talk about the bit more recent examples of like chess in pop culture, I have to say that and what really helped is I have literally gone through every single issue of New in Chess magazine since 1984.
Yeah.
Today. So we're talking about like 30 years of magazines, and that. I probably spent a few weeks browsing through all of them, because that is a very good start. I knew from my head, I've been a long time subscriber, and I've seen a lot of examples. For example, they have a little column there always where they basically always mention a famous personality, a film actor or director or sports person who is involved in chess. And there's also a lot of other more bigger articles that have covered the topic of cultural things like movies, and so it was a very good start to go through that archive one more time, and then there's also great bigger picture books about it. Chess in Arts, there are a lot of good books about it. There's an amazing book about Chess in the Movies by I think his name is Bob Basala.
Yeah, I heard an old interview with Fred Wilson about him. I've seen. I'm familiar with the book. I haven't seen
Yeah,
it. Yeah.
that is like unbelievable. It's like, I don't know, like, what is it, 15, 20,000 films and series are being mentioned. And it's really funny that he also has a categorized system of showing the reader what type of errors are being made. So if the board has a wrong color square, it gets a little symbol. If the
Right.
kings and queens are swapped, it has a little different symbol. And there's all kinds of funny things where you can immediately see, they did it right or they did not do it right. So yeah, different types of sources I use there, a lot of sources, and yeah, I basically try to highlight the nicest and some well-known examples, also lesser known examples, just to demonstrate that it's really it's just crazy how many references there are on chess. You really cannot watch almost cannot watch any Netflix series these days, and at some point you will see an episode where there's a chessboard in the scene or where in the background or actually actively being used. It's crazy, and I'm also quoting my colleague Mike Klein, that he once tried to actually keep track of it
Right.
to see how often he would encounter chess in his daily life, and he already had to give up after a week because it was just too much.
Yeah.
So and it's the kind of thing I basically also want to show to a much wider audience. I keep on emphasizing that I've tried to write a book that is not just interesting for chess fans, but definitely also for the non-chess playing audience, like everyone we know, a chess player's mother or father or partner, or even a child, and they're like, my family never understands why I'm so addicted to this game, why I'm always escaping to the basement to play my online games or whatever, where I'm going to tournaments and I'm preparing for hours, and nobody really gets it. I hope that this book is a way of, like, as a gift to someone, to a friend, like, maybe you finally understand why have been dedicating my life to this board game, while I might even be a weak amateur and I'm still completely addicted to it. This book hopefully sort of explains that a little bit and shows why it's so special.
Yeah, for sure. That really comes across. If anything, I mean, I would say it's more written more with more in mind the casual
Right.
than the diehard chess player. And of course, you went with a non chess publisher. It's being published in many languages, being rolled out. So again, we're recording.
They're all general publishers. I mean, there's in Germany, it's Ullstein is I think one of the biggest publishers. They're the biggest publisher of Italy. Bought the rights. It will be in France, Sweden, Brazil, and Portugal. It's really
Awesome.
it's amazing. It's amazing, to be honest. Yeah.
Yeah, and it was reported when the book came out, or when the announcement came out, that there was a bidding war. You talk a little. I think it's in the intro about sort of the process. Ramel from New in Chess, shout out to Ramel. Helped you find a publisher, but then
he helped me find an agent, which was very useful. Yeah. The agent, because the agent is like, without the agent, I would not have been able to publish it in so many languages. But of course, they have this amazing network of hundreds of worldwide publishers, and they really helped me create this typical package where you have to write like 2 chapters. You have to set up your list of all the chapters. And then you write your motivation, why you think you want to write a book, and why you think you should be the one writing that book. And then there's like another letter from the agent himself, where he sort of promotes you as a writer a little bit, and all that is sort of packed together in one email. And that email then, well, we're talking about April 23. It was sent to I would say like 300 publishers worldwide. And and then at some point, some of them started replying, like, we're interested, and sometimes, for example, here in the Netherlands, but also in the UK, for example, there were multiple, and then you get the situation where basically they have to negotiate, or they have to come with another bid, and at some point you have your publisher. So that's a very interesting process also to go through, because everything like this is very new to me also. Yeah. I've never experienced this kind of stuff before. So
and you got it out in a year and a half. That's pretty impressive.
Yeah, I always say I spent about a year and a half in total, but if you talk about full time, it's probably a year of full time work on it.
Incredible.
Yeah.
So did you take leave from chess.com, or how did that
Yeah,
work?
yeah, I did. Actually, I moved early, like I think December 22 already. When I started on this, I moved to like an hourly contract,
Okay.
and I was still writing occasionally, but especially the first year, I had to say no to a lot of suggestions because they keep me in the loop and they keep asking me, "Do you want to write about this?" and stuff. And I often had to say no, unfortunately. I had to give the book preference. But at some point, the first draft was finished and we were starting the editing process. So I started accepting more and more writing projects again for chess.com. For example, well, actually, last week I did the whole, except for the last day, I covered the whole Grand Global Chess League.
Okay.
And I did some reports for Norway Chess. I did quite a few things this year already again. So yeah, I'm
Did you
not
go to
going to be
London
back full
for
time, I believe, but I'm doing quite a bit for Chess.com again.
did you go to London for the Global Chess League, or did you report
I was
from
there a few
home?
days. Yeah,
Okay.
yeah. Because also what was very nice is that the organizers they had a segment during the opening ceremony where they allowed me to actually present my book.
Oh, right. I saw a photo of that.
Yeah, it
Yeah.
was very nice. So I gave a copy to the highest official of Tech Mahindra who was there, and I had Anish and Arjun on stage to talk a bit about the recent chess boom, and it was a very nice evening. Yeah, they did a lot of things. They had a trivia quiz also during the ceremony, and they had different things. So it was very nice.
Good book for learning chess trivia for sure. And of
Yeah,
course,
yeah, true. Yeah.
so do you have how is the general, I'm always curious about this sort of inside the weeds stuff. How is the general rollout? Do you have many mainstream media appearances lined up? How's that going?
Well, I had quite a bit in Holland, to be honest. But I think the English market still has to start a little bit.
Okay.
But in the Netherlands, I was on the national radio station, also for a Belgian program, by the way. I had an invitation from the Belgian Financial Times. A reporter actually came to my place because they have this weekly series called "Having Breakfast with."
Oh,
So
okay.
someone actually rang my door at 9 a.m. And we made a breakfast for him, and it was a very nice interview. And well, during London, I actually was on BBC Five together with Dominic Lawson to speak, and the book was mentioned several times. So that was really good. I believe there will be either the Financial Times or one of the other major newspapers in the UK is planning to review the book. So yeah, things are
That's
happening. But
great.
I
Fun.
do hope that for the United States, we'll get a few of those gigs as well. Yeah, and of
Yeah, for
course, I
sure.
mean, being here is also amazing.
Yeah. Oh, thank you. Yeah, fun stuff. Yeah. And obviously you're able to write in both. So did you write in English or Dutch or both?
Yeah, yeah, that's a funny thing because I once in between 94 and 99, my studies in Amsterdam was actually I actually studied my own language, Dutch, language and literature, and I was very good. I mean, I did like editing jobs and stuff, and I was like insanely good in the single details of spelling and grammar of my own language, and then I wrote in the English language for 15 years, and now my Dutch
Right.
is pretty bad, actually. My written Dutch is not so great.
That's funny.
Well, I'm exaggerating a little bit, but writing in English is much more easy for me these days. So I wrote in English, and which was also very useful because, of course, with my agent, I was working with international publishers, and they simply wanted everything in English anyway. So because then they can translate it into their own language from English. Yeah, so only after I finished everything, I also translated it back into I translated it into Dutch for my Dutch publisher.
Okay.
And what was nice about it is that the Dutch publisher, they had a bit more space in the book because yeah, I just had a few more pages to fill basically. So there's actually a few more details about my personal life in it, and there's a bit more focus on the Dutch chess scene also in that book.
Okay,
So
that
that's
makes
also
sense.
nice. I'm really trying to have a little a localized bit in every publication. So, for example, my last chapter speaks about the streaming revolution, the streamers, the YouTubers. And in the Dutch book, I have a little interview with Annemaya Kazarian. In the Brazilian book, I speak with Krikor Mkhitaryan. The German book will have Georges Soulaides in it. The French has Kevin Bordy. So all editions also have sort of their local streamer being featured.
That's great.
So that's kind of neat.
Amazing. All right. Well, two more things, Peter. So first of all, did you have a favorite chapter to write?
I do think that's the one we already talked about. I think the one, chapter 8 about the early days of the internet was
that's
the most
my favorite too. Yeah. And I should say for listeners, anyone checking out the book, I mean, I recommend the whole thing, but it is a book where you could read the chapters you're most interested in. And
you can read them individually. It's also, that's true.
Yeah. And last thing, Peter, so you mentioned at the end of the book, you might get back to OTB chess. Peter, by the way, is a very strong player, peak rating near 2,300. You've even
2292.
2292, so close yet so far away. Yeah. Very relatable. Whatever the 100 milestone is, as you write about the book, we all wish we'd gotten that one rung higher. But you're kicking around the idea of returning to chess, at least, I mean, to competitive chess for yourself. Have those ideas advanced at all? I guess you can't even think about it until the book rollout is done.
To be honest, I have been close to entering some tournaments in Holland this summer, and usually it was a situation where I was considering it for weeks and weeks, and by the time I sort of decided, okay, maybe I'll do it, I go to the tournament website, and it was the registration where I had completed, so. And but there was also this thing in the back of my mind. The thing is, I never crossed 2,300, but I do have 2 IM norms, which is crazy. One in 2004 and one in 2014. So the idea that I'm not even trying in 2024, like to have one every 10 years, is also wild, So I might end up playing. I'm actually thinking about the one in Sieges in December.
Oh yeah,
but I have to make a decision very soon about that. And otherwise, I do think I will play another tournament in 25 at least. But yeah, it's as I write in the book, it's also the longer you wait, the bigger the challenge it seems to get back to it, because of as we discussed, the amazing tools and the growth in opening theory and everyone, also players of my level and lower, being incredibly booked up in the openings. It's not going to be easy when I'm going to try.
Yeah, for sure. What's your advice for getting back into game shape? Your advice to yourself?
Well, what I do know is I would probably have to spend like a month or two trying to solve exercises on a daily basis, because that I think is the most important thing, is that you are going to train your engine. Basically, the most important part in the end is still calculation. During your games, and so I would really want to sort of try to get a rhythm of doing daily exercises, both the quick puzzle rush type of tactics, but also the more difficult positions, and put it on I have this nice chess set that I have, this table from the House of Staunton, and just put positions there and really focus. Actually, I have been recently going back to one of the old classics, my 60 memorable games.
Wow.
I realized I never actually played through the whole book, all 60 of them, And and what I do, and maybe it's a nice tip for listeners here also, is what I do. I went to chessgames.com, because there's a page where you have the whole collection of all 60 games with just the bare moves, obviously. And I put a game on my phone, and I just click through the opening. And as soon as the opening is sort of over, I constantly start to predict Fischer's moves.
Yeah, guess a move.
I take like 3 minutes on it. Yeah. And you go through the whole game. You spend like an hour on that, for example. And then after you do that, you actually go through Fischer's analysis. I really enjoy that, but it's time consuming. As you know, there's only so many hours in the day, but I kind of like that. But as it always happens, I mean, I ended up doing like 8 games in a period of 2 weeks, and now the book has been there on the table for the last 2 weeks now, sitting there. So it's just so difficult to stay with it. It's really difficult.
Yeah, it really is. That's why I have so much respect for all the amateurs I interview who, set out these 2-year schedules and actually stick to them because, I'm with you. I struggle to maintain the regimen, struggling as we speak, in fact.
I'm and to be honest, I'm still in this late in my career. I'm now 49. I still feel that if you do have the discipline, that you can still do amazing things, as you have had in many examples in your podcast. So maybe, I don't know, maybe one of those training groups like this Killer Chess Training or something like that. Maybe that's something for me. Maybe I'll try it at some point.
That'd
Just
be great.
to have someone giving me. I need someone to give me homework, and I need someone to sort of punish me for not doing it.
Yeah, I'm in the exact same boat. Yeah. When I've said this before, but I was getting lessons for a while with Grandmaster Axel Bachmann, and he's an amazing teacher. But at some point, I wasn't playing enough to sort of justify the expense, and so I put it on the back burner. And once that was gone, the wheels came off.
Right.
It's just so hard to stick with it.
Yeah.
So yeah, but Peter, I hope you find the energy, especially with those norms. That's got to be enticing, So if you can accidentally get one norm, then you can go for the FIDE 2400.
Yeah, it's funny. I always think, like, if I'm gonna theoretically play like 30 or 40 more tournaments in my life, there's a pretty good chance that one of those tournaments I will score one more IM norm. But
right.
I will never. Now I dropped to like 2150, so I will never ever break 2400 anymore. I don't believe in that. So
yeah,
it would be just another medal, an individual medal, but it would be a fun medal. Yeah.
I did just interview Salim Sitak, who fell to 2150 from 2350 and made it to 2400 in his 30s. So the stories are out there, but certainly they're the exceptions rather than the rules. Never want to lose sight of that. Well, Peter, I know it's a busy time for you. Just to make our listeners jealous, we'll mention you're heading to Cancun for the chess.com annual meeting the day after we record this. And obviously you've got the book rollout as well, but congratulations. Greatly enjoyed it. I'll ask you something that people ask me every day. Is it going to be an audiobook?
Definitely. Yeah. No, and the publisher is working on it.
Okay, great.
I believe it might actually be available also on... what is it? At UK, rest of the world is October 24, and US and Philippines is October 29.
Okay, great. And for anyone wondering about my audiobook, it's still coming. I don't know when, but it's still coming.
Yeah. Well, maybe mine will also be a bit later. I don't know actually when they are going to come, but they are going to come with it. Yeah.
Okay. And just to reiterate for listeners, there's an appendix with the chess games referenced, but other than that, there's a few pictures and it's just prose. So to me, word lover as well as chess lover, that's great news, but just want listeners to know going in that this is a book, I would say 60% for the casual chess fan and 40% for the diehards. You'll learn something no matter what, but just want listeners to have the proper perspective. But congratulations, Peter. You did an awesome job, and
Thank you.
Really enjoyed it. And I think people know how to reach you, right? Through chess.com.
Yeah, actually, because of this book, I also put up a personal website. So there's also peterdoggers.com.
Okay. So
with a contact form. But my chess.com email address, peter@chess.com, is also publicly available. So yeah.
Okay, great. So I'll put all that stuff in the show notes. And thanks again, Peter, and congratulations.
Thank you. Okay. And good luck with the show.
Oh, thank you. Take care.